Hey everybody, today I want to take a look at one of my favorite bands of all time, that being Deceased. A handful of you might have seen a video I made about Deceased several months ago, but I was missing a couple things. It didn't look very good. I'm just redoing it here. And we are in October now, the Halloween season, my favorite time of year, and Deceased have always been one of the bands that gets me in the Halloween mood, and perfect time to put this out. So Deceased formed in 1985 in Virginia. The main guy behind the band is King Fowley, who was the drummer and vocalist, who for the last, I'd say 20 years at least, he has reverted to just the vocalist. For being a straightforward metal band, I've always found points of reference kind of hard. But simply put, I'd say they are an old school, thrashy death metal band. But as they progressed through the years, definitely more and more classic metal has been getting put in there. But when I say classic metal, I don't really hear the Judas Priest and the Iron Maidens. It's something else there that's giving it that touch. But again, I find it hard to put my finger on. When I first discovered the band, I saw a review that categorized them as being a mixture of Venom, Voivod, and Repulsion, which I find both interesting and pretty accurate. The subject matter has always been horror movies or horror stories of their own. They've also put out many releases, a lot of live albums, cover albums, compilations. I'm just here to talk about their original music. So we're going to start in 1991 with their debut album, Luck of the Corpse. If you didn't know, Deceased were the first band to ever sign to Relapse Records, but this is not a Relapse version. This is one of the more recent Hell's Headbangers editions. Very well done as usual. This one's got one of those black backings, which, you don't see that often, but I find it cool when I do find them. The most death metal thing they've ever put out, the most extreme vocals they've ever done. Again, the vocals have always had a lot in common with Kronos from Venom. The highlight on here has probably got to be the midpoint of the album, Futuristic Doom, Haunted Cerebellum, Decrepit Coma. This is one of my favorite old school death metal albums for sure. Up next, we have The 13 Frightened Souls, which is an EP. This is a old version on Relapse, 1992. 5 songs, and my favorite one on here has got to be the opener and the title track, The 13 Frightened Souls. Very cool album cover. That design you've seen a million times where it's a tree and you gotta find 15, 20 images within. Same kind of concept, but it's just a spooky, scary version of it. In 1995, the second full-length album, The Blueprints for Madness. As much as this is still a great album, this is probably my least favorite of the old stuff. This is another newer Hell's Headbangers edition. This one with the purple backing. Starts off with 2 of their more well-known songs, Morbid Shape in Black and The Triangle. I'm also a big fan of Creek of the Dead, Midnight. Morbid Shape in Black, that one has a sample from the movie Messiah of Evil, which I've been hearing it getting brought up more and more since it started streaming on Shudder a couple years ago. But again, this is back in the 90s. And actually I remember watching that movie and falling asleep on the couch, and that They'll Never Hear You Scream sample that both opens and ends the movie. I remember that just waking me up off the couch at 3 in the morning and scaring the hell out of me. Never forget that. But this album here, again, another classic, but one of my least favorites. Next up, this is Fearless Undead Machines from 1997. This is when I first became acquainted with the band. The song started getting longer. The guitar playing took a big step up. The song Fearless Undead Machines, I heard that one on a sampler, and it blew my mind. To this day, if I'm talking to a young guy that's getting into extreme metal, I always tell them to check that song out. I think it's a masterpiece, one of the best metal songs ever. And if they like that, there's a lot to explore in Deceased's catalog. My second favorite song here has got to be The Psychic. This was originally put out on Relapse, but this is put out on Shrieks from the Hearse, which is the band's label, I believe. And I bought this when I saw them live, maybe 11 months ago, last November. They came through town with Bulldozer, Ari's Kingdom, and Demiser, that new band. Awesome show. They ended their set with Fearless Undead Machines. Couldn't have asked for anything more. I bought this tour shirt there. I love the front design. And I also bought this cool patch there. What's that say? 35 Years of Terror. Three years later, in 2000, we have Supernatural Addiction. I think this was probably the band's commercial peak, even though that's probably not saying much. This was put out on Relapse. In many ways, I'd say it's their most accessible album. As the years have gone on, I gotta say, I think it's the best one. The opener, The Premonition, a metal classic, ends with Ellie's Dementia, which is based on the Blair Witch Project. I mentioned before that I read an interview where King Fowley was really praising the Blair Witch Project. And I remember I saw that movie like once, thought it was okay, but based on his recommendation, I checked it out again. And that is a scary movie when you go back and watch it, and it's turned into one of my favorites. And that's a really creepy song. In the body of the album, my favorite one's got to be Frozen Screams. Again, this is perfect for Halloween. Check it out. Now, there'd be a big break between Supernatural Addiction and the next album. And during that time, they put out Behind the Mourner's Veil, which is their only original music, which I don't have. And it's 3 new songs. The highlight, in my opinion, is The Mausoleum, and then a handful of cover songs. Deceased has always done a lot of cover songs. My favorite one on there is New Age of Total Warfare by the band Warfare. So that EP, that's the one Deceased thing that I don't have that I still want to get my hands on. But anyways, so 5 years on from Supernatural Addiction is As the Weird Travel On. I think that one came out on Relapse, but this one I have here is Thrash Corner Records, distributed by The End Records. So I think this is kind of concluding their 3-4 album involvement with maybe the slightly more popular metal scene. But this is also my least favorite of those albums. A lot of people think it's one of the best ones. My favorites on here are A Witness to Suspiria, and the closing 2 tracks, A Visit from Dread and Fright. Be another long gap between albums, but Surreal Overdose would eventually come out in 2011. This is on Patak and Shrieks from the Hearse. I thought this was another in a long line of amazing releases. If I had to pick just one song on here, I'm going to go with Cloned, Day of the Robot. And then we're going to look at their most recent full-length album, Ghostly White. This one came out in 2018. I remember I bought it when it came out, although it feels a lot more recent than that. Has it really been 5 years? I guess so. My favorite song on here, it's got to be the opener, Mrs. Allardyce, which I believe is based on Burnt Offerings, the horror movie. I think so. I saw that movie, but back when I was like 20 years ago. So, Deceased, one of the greatest metal bands ever, if you ask me. Looking at their full-length albums, how would I rank these? My number 1, Supernatural Addiction. Number 2, Fearless Undead Machines. 3, Luck of the Corpse. 4, Surreal Overdose. 5, As the Weird Travel On. 6, The Blueprints for Madness. And finally, the most recent album, Ghostly White. But don't take that the wrong way. I still love it. Hope for another album soon. And that's it. Thanks for watching.